Next on our agenda is to actually hear from Dr. Coleman Ford, who directs the professional doctoral programs. I believe he's got Dr. Shane Parker with him as well. I'm going to ask you guys to unmute and turn your videos on so that you guys can start to share with us. Before they start to share, I just want to kind of hit a couple of items. I mentioned it at the very beginning of the webcast that we're doing, and then Dr. Greenway mentioned as a part of his that we just launched a D-Min in Church Revitalization this past year. In fact, our first cohort meeting was this past January. Actually, Matt Hensley was a part of that group. He's finishing his D-Min, and he took our course as an elective. But this is a new day at Southwestern with some new opportunities. And this D-Min in Church Revitalization, it's actually, you could do it as a D-Min or a D-Ed-Min. Is definitely a new tool that we're making available. So we're hoping that this topic of working on your doctorate while you're trying to work in revitalization might be of interest to you, because this is really what scares some guys away. They don't want to do their doctorate because they are doing so much work in revitalization. So Coleman, are you with us?
Hey, Dr. Priest.
Excellent. There we go, man.
Yeah.
The time is yours and Dr. Parker's, so share with us.
Okay, I'll let Dr. Parker kick us off here.
Sounds good. I am grateful to be with you all. Give me a thumbs up and make sure you can hear me well. Okay, fantastic. I'm thrilled to be with you. My role, again, as Dr. Priest said, is I am Associate Professor of Leadership and Educational Ministries in the Terry School at Southwestern, and I direct the D-Ed-Min program. And our session title is fitting. Can you really do a doctorate while you're trying to be faithful, as we've just heard, to church revitalization? And I want to turn it on its ear a little bit and have you ask this question very individually, because I think this question might help you and help us get around what might the Lord be doing to best support us and move us through even this severe season we're dealing with COVID-19 and trying to be faithful in church revitalization. I think the question is, can you successfully revitalize your church without guidance and accountability? And one form of that can be a doctoral program. I had to ask that question when I moved into doctoral study. I've worked in church revitalization in Kentucky, North Carolina, and South Carolina, and church planting as well. And I can tell you firsthand that in my experience being a revitalizing pastor and seeking daily to get up and on most good days pray and then move toward my family and my people with some passion and intention toward gospel proclamation and gospel rooting in their lives so they could proclaim the gospel to people who were far from God. In that activity, PhD study really did provide exactly what I needed to be effective and more certain of what I was doing in revitalization. And so I think it's a very individual question. Can you really participate in a doctoral program in the midst of revitalization? And that's why I think this is a helpful format. We can have some degree, and we'll have some Q&A at the end around, is this a good fit for you? And the series of programs that are offered, not only at Southwestern, but other institutions that are reputable and we've been engaged in and have good collegial relationship with, could something like that be a help to you? I think you have to answer that question. Can I be effective at what I'm doing? And can I be faithful without real supportive direction and accountability to move in that direction in sustained fashion? I think that's a fitting point of consideration, especially as I see not only in social media, but phone calls, not so much face-to-face interaction these days with people who are actively engaged in revitalization and even in planting, who are seeking just that. Am I going to have the guidance I need? Am I going to have the support that I need? And where would I even go for that if I didn't know that I needed it? And so I just want to encourage you, even at the outset of our conversation, as we'll talk through options, what different streams or access points could be. What is your current situation and setting? What is the current form of guidance and support that you have by those that you can trust so that you can be as effective as possible? The reason I want to encourage you, brothers, to ask that question of yourselves and of your congregation And even if you're leading those who are accessing points who want to lead their congregation well, if you're in a network or supportive role there, when you think about the people that you're mentoring or walking alongside of, what do they really need? Part of the reason I want you to ask that question is because I've sat, as several of you have, in a number of doctoral dissertation hearings, right? That translates into firing squad for many people. When they hear that, that's an ominous setting to sit across the table from those who are your professor, those who are your guiding supervisors, and have them ask you questions after you present something you've labored toward for years. But I've sat in enough of those settings, particular in professional doctoral studies, and we'll talk about what that is here in just a moment. And I've had students actively weep, and these weren't students that were prone to weeping earlier in their program or in my relationship with them, but actively weep and say things along the lines of, I don't know that I would have been able to make it, or my church would have been able to make it without this program. And so I think that's the type of prayerful sensitivity that we want to have in this dialogue and conversation with you. Would the Lord in his providence move you in the direction of doctoral study? Because it's a means that he wants to use, not to get in the way of church revitalization, but to embolden and ensure it for you. And so Dr. Ford's going to talk us through some of the options and some of the ways that you can access doctoral education. And I want us to be actively and prayerfully thinking through, is this something I need to be effective in church revitalization, rather than see it as something that could encumber it, especially in these days. So Dr. Ford, please guide us.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Parker. Well, so just a quick introduction to myself. I'm the Director of Professional Doctoral Studies here at Southwestern Seminary. Dr. Parker and I work closely together to shepherd our students in our professional doctoral programs. And it's been really exciting to think about how church revitalization and doctoral work can partner with one another. And as I look at the landscape of professional doctoral studies, and so when we say professional doctoral studies, we're looking at a Doctor of Ministry, Doctor of Educational Ministry degrees. When I look at the landscape of those degrees, I can't think of a better concentration that partners with those degrees more than church revitalization, church replanting. Of course, we have programs in preaching and missions and evangelism, and we have lots of programs that we hope to bring online here in the near future. But for the purposes of today, we're thinking about church revitalization. And again, the way in which church revitalization works it melds so well with how professional doctoral degree operates. So Dr. Parker kind of teed that up a little bit, but I just want to give, I think, just 5 reasons why a doctoral study journey might be beneficial for you as a church revitalizer or church replanter. And the first one is that it simply connects you to a network of other like-minded ministry leaders. So you have Dr. Priest, who's leading our time today in this conference. We have other people who have been presenting, and then other folks within their networks that are a part of the revitalization church planting conversation. And as you come to the campus of Southwestern, as you engage in doctoral studies in revitalization, you are becoming connected to that network. Through our professors, through the ministry leaders who are involved in this program. So it immediately opens the gates up to a wide network of like-minded ministry leaders who are doing the work of revitalization and replanting. And so as I think about the realities, the sober realities of replanting and revitalization that other presenters have mentioned so far in this conference, there is a great need for support. There's a great need for accountability. There's a great need for that network of peers and friends who are likewise doing that work. So again, it connects you to that community. And again, community is such a key aspect to doctoral work in general, whatever you're doing, whether it's a doctor of ministry, a doctor of philosophy, whatever the degree program is, community is such a key facet. And that's a high value for this church revitalization concentration that we have. Dr. Priest leading that in lots of ways and others as well. But then it also trains you to become an expert practitioner in the area of church revitalization. A professional doctoral degree, its main focus is to help you become a better practitioner of that ministry that you're engaged in. So that's obviously helpful for you. That's also helpful for your church as you're going through this process. But that's also helpful for the grander picture, the grander scheme of church revitalization and replanting. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you essentially have an opportunity to speak from expertise. Many of you might have the real life experience of church planting that's invaluable. You might have other ways in which you can demonstrate expertise through education and just your own development. But the professional doctoral studies in general, allows you to speak with a measure of authority, out of humility, of course, but as a way to say, this is something that I've studied for the past 3 or 4 years. I know this material well. I know the challenges well, both personally, but also in the literature, whether that's a biblical, theological, foundations and other texts that are written about this. You can speak with authority. You can become an expert practitioner in this. And even though, as we were reminded by others today, the goal is not to become the next conference speaker. The goal is not to become the next Crossway or B&H published author on this. The goal is for you to say, again, I have a measure of expertise, and then you can serve the churches, you can serve associations, you can serve the convention in lots of ways because you have this expert knowledge in the area of church revitalization. And a third thing that I think is really helpful in thinking about professional doctoral work is that church revitalization gives you a natural habitat or a natural laboratory for your doctoral work. Now, others may be able to speak to this in regards to what they've done in their doctoral work, but as you, as a church leader, church replanter, whatever your role is, you already have that laboratory established in order to conduct your doctoral work. So your seminar work is all working towards helping you understand the biblical theological frameworks, the cultural issues, the ways in which the Great Commission interacts with revitalization, leadership, other aspects of revitalization. But then you engage in the project, you engage in the doctoral project with your church as the environment. You're writing a project for the people of your church. You're writing a project to help them understand a certain facet of evangelism, or you're writing a project in order to increase the effectiveness of discipleship or reaching the community in some other way or fashion. So again, it's a natural laboratory. As I mentioned before, there's really, I think, no other concentration that so naturally pairs with a professional doctoral study. Church revitalization gives you that opportunity to immediately dive in, immediately apply what you've learned, and also take this church revitalization ministry to the next level. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing that I think is really important that I want to emphasize is that doctoral work, as Dr. Parker mentioned, is formative for you as a leader. There is a spiritual formation, a formational element to being a doctoral student that in some ways is not available at the master's level, although it's, I think, there, and it's tried to accomplish that in some ways, but it's in a more intense formative practice that is available within the doctoral studies program, because not only are you dedicating your time and needing to sacrifice in some ways, let go of some of your preferences in order to study. So the Lord's using that time to do that. But you're also growing in your disciplines and becoming a more effective communicator. And as I mentioned for the first point, have a community of fellow peers who are learning these things together. So this is all part of a formational journey to help you become a better ministry leader. And we're not necessarily concerned with whether you get a 4.0 GPA at the end of the day, although we're going to encourage you excel as best you can. We're going to prioritize how you are being formed as a Christian, as a ministry leader, as a more effective proclaimer of the gospel wherever you are deployed, wherever you are located. And so that's going to be another aspect of this experience, which you might get in different ways, in different facets, whether you're go through a coaching program or something like this, but it's a much more intense and robust way of forming you as a ministry leader. The last one that I want to just emphasize, and this kind of goes along with some other points, is that professional doctoral studies allows you or gives you access to mentors and coaches, those who have been a part of revitalization. So whether that's the faculty that we have at Southwestern, or again, our network of ministry leaders that are connected to our Center for Church Revitalization, and the ways in which revitalization is being thought about and practiced, you get access to these individuals, faculty, coaches, ministry leaders that we are privileged to work with, and that you now can tap into. So as a doctoral student, you get paired with a faculty supervisor who is helping you walk through the process of your doctoral project, who is helping you think more cogently, clearly write and articulate what you want to say, but then also cheering you on as you put your project into practice, as you develop that class or develop that ministry plan for revitalization. Whatever your project is, you have a faculty member, a couple of them, who are part of your team, so to speak, of helping this project come to fruition. And then as we're developing our programs, we're hoping to bring in more ministry leaders, more coaching aspects to help you along the way to think about more than just the doctoral project. Think about your personal disciplines. Think about your communication style, your leadership effectiveness, your organizational structures, things like this that we want to help and understand that it's not just about getting a doctorate. It's about, again, helping you be an effective minister, an effective ministry leader. And so these are the facets that we feel like help you understand why doctoral studies is a value as a church revitalizer, as a church replanter. And so specifically, I see a few questions have popped up, and I know some people are answering those questions. But I want to just answer a few technical questions in regards to our programs, if those who are interested. We have, as Dr. Priest mentioned, a Doctor of Ministry program, and then also a Doctor of Educational Ministry program. Those are both very similar, although they have some distinctives that would need to be explained. A Doctor of Ministry program typically requires an MDiv, or a master's level equivalency of hours and work that would lend itself to a Master of Divinity degree. And then it's a 28-hour program where you take 4 seminars, again, in church revitalization. And what I love about the Church Revitalization program, and that Dr. Priest has pioneered, and I'm trying to get all of our concentrations thinking about, is that every single seminar is going to contribute in some significant way toward your doctoral writing project. So the papers that you're writing are not just going to be one-off papers that don't really connect with the project. No, they're actually feeding into the doctoral project. So you're not working. That you're actually working with the doctoral project as you do your seminar work. And that's what a Doctor of Ministry degree looks like. A Doctor of Educational Ministry is very similar in the fact that you will have 4 concentration seminars in church revitalization, but you also have 2 additional seminars in educational leadership and research. And that degree specifically is geared more towards those who have a master's of Christian education or an equivalent type degree, something that would be equivalent to that on a master's level. And it is typically geared towards those who might be serving in more educational ministries or more discipleship type ministries, though it doesn't preclude anybody who is in pastoral leadership, ministry leadership, to be a part of that degree. But that would be something that you're going to have a couple of additional seminars, which would just be an additional added benefit to helping you be a better researcher, a better thinker, a better leader, and communicator. And so that's the basics of those 2 degrees. And both of them are going to be about a 3-year process. And the way that we're hoping to structure our program is that you would have a minimal amount of time on campus, that we would also maximize things like this. I know we're all now used to Zoom and other digital platforms. We want to take the best of what can be offered in these sort of mediums, but then also pair it with on-campus experiences that are rich, that are meaningful, that connect you to the life of the seminary. Some of you may be Southwestern alum, or some of you never step foot on our campus. We want to create a rich doctoral experience that's going to connect you to the life of our campus, our faculty, our staff and leaders, and then also to each other. So we really feel like those things working together, both robust online discussion, robust online delivery, content, as well as an on-campus format a couple times throughout your program, is going to be the best way to serve you as someone who's in the trenches of revitalization, but also forming you as a ministry leader. And so I know, again, some questions have come up on the chat box, but Dr. Parker and I want to just open up the last few minutes that we have to questions that you may have that we could answer, and conceptually or specifically. Some of those we may decide to take offline if we need to, if it gets a little past our time, but would want to open our time up for that at this time.
While we're waiting for a couple of questions to come in, let me just prod you with your initial questions. So talk to us briefly about what the concentration options are. So I can do church revitalization, sure, but what else is available?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dr. Priest. Yeah, church revitalization for sure. We also have text-driven preaching led by Dr. Allen and our competent faculty in the School of Preaching. That's a premier program that we offer. We also have missions and evangelism. So for those who might be involved more broadly in that ministry, whether you're a director of missions, or you're a missions pastor, evangelism pastor, or just a lead pastor who's concerned with that, that's something we're getting ready to bring online, a renewed concentration in pastoral theology. Previously it was called pastoral leadership, but pastoral theology. So we're going to look at the theology, history, and practice of pastoral ministry, pastoral care, pastoral leadership, those kind of things. We also have youth and family ministry. Dr. Parker can maybe talk more to that at the de-admin level. And then we are in the process of bringing on multiple more concentrations. Of course, biblical counseling is one of those, others that we already have. But as far as de-admin concentrations, Dr. Parker can pick up where I left off on those.
Yeah, fantastic. As Dr. Ford mentioned, we have several that are likely to be publicized here in the very near future. So if you have interest, let me just insert even here, interest in any of these programs or individual conversation, we'd love for you to reach out to us. So Dr. Ford's email is cford@swbts.edu. We'll put this in the chat box as well. My email I've listed in the chat box, and I'll mention here, is sparker@swbts.edu, because you may have very individualized questions, but also don't be fearful of asking your questions here in just a moment. In terms of concentration areas, Dr. Ford mentioned a moment ago, youth and family ministry. The focus there really is going to be on the spectrum of family ministry concerns and discipline areas. And so if you are engaged, or you have staff members who are engaged in family ministry, in youth ministry, that's going to be a fitting concentration in which they might focus their attention. Another concentration area that we're anticipating and might be fitting for some of you, it'll be fairly selective, but not unduly so. And that's to focus on executive leaders. Those are leaders who typically are either principal leaders in mid-sized to larger churches, or a part of church staffs that are sizable or large, because those ecosystems tend to have their own brand of concerns. They're not better, they're just different if you've ever served in one of those environments. And so another concentration that we think is going to be fitting, and I'd want to highlight for you, is Christian leadership. We hope that when we can publicize that more actively, Dr. Ford mentioned 4 concentration courses that you would take in any of these areas. Christian leadership is going to allow you the flexibility to take 2 leadership-focused courses and then 2 courses in a series of other concentration areas. So you're getting the value of leadership-intensive focus alongside another concentration, and your writing can demonstrate that as well as you're building toward project completion. And so church revitalization and those who are engaged in replanting, even planting and revitalization, can many times benefit of having that dual emphasis, if you will. And so there's a number of other concentrations that, again, are going to be proposed. It really comes down to, what do you need as you most effectively lead in your setting? And so we'd love to have individual conversation with you if you're even toying with the notion for yourself or for staff members, even staff in denominational agencies as you relate to local churches. There may be options for you. And as well, I would put this out there as a point of consideration. If you're looking at the possibility right now to develop cohesion and direction for your staff or principal members of your staff, there are ways in which your project writing can actually complement other staff members' project writing in these programs as well. And so you might think together about how these platforms can best serve what you're trying to achieve. And so I hope that that's somewhat helpful. Again, I would pose to you, it might be beneficial to ask individual questions, whether through email or whether even here, about points of interest as we learn together.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and open up the gates even wider to the possibility of those who are considering PhD work. So while Dr. Parker and myself are most primarily concerned with professional doctoral degrees, we also want to consider those who might think a PhD is where they're going to best vocationally find the training they need. And again, Southwestern is a great place to do that. We have a flex PhD option, which allows for minimal on-campus requirements, coming for a few times for necessary things, but for seminar work and other work that you would do, reading and other things, you would be able to do a meeting just like this with other students who are both located on campus but also off campus. And so some of you may be of the disposition that you want to become an innovative scholar in the area of church revitalization, and you want to do that through a PhD concentration in systematic theology, church history, preaching, and hopefully more concentrations that may come online in the near future. So for some of you, again, that might be the answer to the doctoral question that you've been asking. As Dr. Parker helpfully said, I mean, you need to evaluate where you are at, what your disposition is, and then also begin having those individual conversations with myself or Dr. Parker, and also our Director of Research Doctoral Studies, Dr. Arnold, who would be happy to field those questions as well. So if that's something that you're considering, I saw someone on there considering a PhD, that's also something that we want to invite a conversation around. Of course, that's going to be, in some senses, more intense in regards to your time commitment and your mental commitment on a more regular weekly basis. But perhaps some of you are called to that, and we don't want to neglect that as a possibility. So regardless of what the doctoral work looks like, the points that I mentioned, I think, apply across the board. Having a community, having a formational process, helping you think deeply and richly about these topics for the purpose of your local church that you're seeking to revitalize, or that you're stepping into to revitalize or replant. A doctoral degree across the spectrum, we feel like, is going to help. And I love how Dr. Parker said this. I agree. It provided an accountability structure and framework to give you that momentum forward. And it allowed men and women and other people to speak into the process and encourage you along the way. I know that's the same for me in my own doctoral work. So yeah, I just want to let that be known. And again, I think Dr. Parker put the email on there if you're interested.
Yep.
Dr. Arnold would love to receive those.
Well, and I'll, the great thing about being an interim at the seminary as well as being an adjunct is if I say something wrong, they can just, I have a day job, so it's okay. One other research degree that's gearing up to be launched this upcoming fall, most likely, maybe the summer, is an EDD. So Southwestern is going to be relaunching the EDD, Doctor of Education degree as well. And so that's just another opportunity. So really what we've got available for you at the seminary is a plethora of opportunities. So whether it's professional doctoral or research-based doctoral degrees, we have opportunities for you to engage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. And so, as we've mentioned, Dr. Parker's mentioned, some of these are pending and forthcoming, and we would love to discuss those in more detail as they become public and online and available. So, regardless the messages, this is a good time to consider doctoral work, to consider engaging in doctoral studies, and myself, Dr. Parker, others stand ready to help field those questions, sit down with you, probably virtually at this point, but sit down and discuss how we can partner with you in your church as the Lord is working to revitalize that local congregation.
I would mention too, since Dr. Priest mentioned that as well, the Doctor of Education program will be at liberty here within the next 7 to 10 days to more publicly speak in great detail about it. But as you think about containers or categories of doctoral students, Dr. Ford mentioned this a few moments ago. If you think about expertise in practice being what professional doctoral studies is about, you're doing this thing. How do you become more effective, right? Gain expertise at it. And if you think about innovation in scholarship, right? Driving that forward in the PhD, really in between those two is the Doctor of Education, or EDD. How do you become a scholar? How do you build in scholarship and active research, but you are a practitioner as well? And that's really where the EDD situates itself. You'll be able to complete that degree in 2.5 years in a cohort model. And so if you have any interest in that, I've had some direct involvement in initially launching it. And so please email me on that as well. I'd be more than happy to speak to you. I'll be, again, at more liberty to speak in detail in the next 7 to 10 days about what that looks like. But that's an exciting opportunity as well.
Great. Okay, I think we did have a question that came up. So I think it was Peter. You had raised your hand. Aaron. Oh, there we go. It was Aaron. Go ahead, Aaron.
So a couple of things real quick. I did the MTS all online, graduated in 2017. It worked really good for me being in full-time ministry. So if anybody's thinking about that, it's awesome. I got to go at my own pace, which was great. Only went on campus to graduate and bought the shirt. So question, would this program be at your own pace as well?
That's a good question. In some senses, yes, in the sense that we're building in some mechanisms that can be online, whether that's your writing phase and some other things, but we really want to prioritize the accountability structure that a doctoral program like this provides. And so we do obviously have set seminar times, things that will be kind of a requirement as you meet with your seminar and your cohort of peers. It's not necessarily a register for one seminar at this time, and then a year later you can register this seminar. We really want to prioritize from day one. You're working on your program, your project rather, and then you're coming on campus a couple times to complete your seminar work, and along the way you're writing in the midst of that. Now that doesn't mean we don't want to provide flexibility as things happen and as ministry events occur, life events occur. But we really also want to, again, as Dr. Parker and others have expressed, want you to see this program as a way in which you are directly partnering with the seminary in order to not only complete a doctoral program, but to work towards the revitalization project that you're a part of. And so again, just to have that structure available. And so, yeah, for someone like you, Aaron, who's completed MTS online, and also thinking about, should I, what's the pathway to getting into this program? There may need to be some leveling work involved, likely not much, especially if you're thinking about a D-Admin, which will be a master's level entry requirement as far as an MA Christian education equivalent. But we don't want anyone to feel like I'm all of a sudden out of the running because of my degree or my previous experience. We want to be able to help you understand what it looks like, the pathway towards this degree, the on-ramp onto this degree, and then recognize the value again of having the framework in order to help you successfully complete the program towards revitalization or whatever concentration.
Perfect, Coleman. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other hands up that we didn't see? All right, Dr. Ford, any closing thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, I'm just excited to see all the participants that have been a part of this conference so far. And I know we all come from different experiences and we all have different um, concerns that are in front of us. But I think the main concern that we have is to see the local church of Jesus Christ built up for the Great Commission and for more effective mission and evangelism and ministry in wherever we're located. And so I just want to make myself available if it's not necessarily going to lead to a doctoral program, that's okay. I don't want it to sound like that's my only concern. I'm greatly concerned for our ministry leaders who are in the middle of this effort to revitalize and replant our churches. And so across the board, I want to make myself available to help and to talk and to begin the conversation and how to be a partner with you regardless of where that leads. So thank you guys for your time. Thank you for hearing from us. And we're happy again just to receive any questions following this time and spend some time talking to you further.
Well, we appreciate your time, Dr. Ford and Dr. Parker. Thanks so much for joining in. I would say that I got a text from Matt Queen. He wanted me to mention to you guys that we have a PhD concentration in church vitalization, which includes church growth, revitalization, planting, and replanting. So that is another option for you guys if you're considering the PhD route. We already have a path set up for you to take that. So that's just another quick note on doctoral options. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us, and we'll look forward to staying connected with you as we're moving through this.